You're listening to the Behind Ears podcast, because everybody does Disney differently. The Behind Ears podcast crew would like to thank the following sponsors for their generous support. Hey everybody, it's Mr. Chris, and I gotta tell you about Expedition Roasters. Listen, I'm a pretty big coffee drinker, just like a lot of you are, but these people have got coffee right. Their coffees are made from selectively sourced premium and specialty grade Arabica beans. They provide the absolute best flavor and aroma, and select roasts even come directly from a single estate farm for a truly ever bitter. They've got awesome Disney instances, Roundhouse Roast, Skipper's Brewst, Redhead, one of my favorites, have the taste of Disney in every cup. Give them first order by using code EAR, and you can find them on .com. Brew your happy plan, and you're going to Walt Disney World, you're going to need .com is you want to look into. I'll tell you, I've destroyed my fair share of strollers while at Walt Disney World, and those things are not cheap. But getting something from KingdomStrollers.com, they'll be able to help you pick out the perfect stroller for you. And the nice part is that because they're a Disney preferred provider, they'll be able to drop it off and pick it up right from your Disney resort at no extra charge. So if you don't want to necessarily destroy your stroller in the process, and you want to have a great Disney vacation with your little one, contact KingdomStrollers.com and they'll set you right up. That's KingdomStrollers.com. And Danny is frozen on the screen. And this is exactly what we need. And welcome to another episode of Behind the Ears Podcast. I am one of the hosts, Mr. Chris. Uncle Danny, I don't know where he went, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stick around and say hello to you guys. And this is one of those cases where I warned our guest before we actually started that no matter what happens, just keep going. And Danny is back. And I'll tell you, nothing has ever been truer than when stuff like this happens and we just keep rolling with it. How you doing tonight, my friend?
Human error. That's all I can say.
Human error.
Error.
Did you press the wrong button?
I did. That's the second time tonight. Well, let's get it rolling. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us here live on Behind the Ears Podcast. I am Uncle Danny, the man wearing the hat, the man with the pen. That is Mr. Chris. Sir, how are you doing on this fine Thursday evening? I'm
actually doing really good. I mean, we finally okay. The Chicagoland area bypassed spring altogether and went directly to summer. I really didn't want to have to turn my fan on during the show because I know it makes a little bit of background noise, but I got to tell you, it is stinking warm and humid. I feel like I'm in a jungle. I wish I was somewhere where I don't mind if it was warm, but a lot less humidity. I don't care. It's warm and I'm wearing shorts. There you go. Pretty stinking excited just for that. But man, I think we've got a great show in store for everybody. Give this a share out for those of you who are live, and for those of you who are joining us via the podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of our show today.
All right, Chris. Well, I'm going to bring up our guest as we're doing that. Why don't you start with Chad? Introduce him first.
All right. So tonight we've got a special guest, and we've got we've got Chad, and he is the musical composer for Star Wars Scoundrels. And also at the same time, we have Mark, who I think you're bringing up right now. Gosh, this is now. I was going to say, there we go. And Mark there, who was somewhat of the man that pretty much did everything between writing, acting, producing, and directing, and editing the movie itself. Sorry, I'm a little thrown off only because Danny and I did this out of sequence, but that's okay. And tonight, Chad and Mark are going to join us. We're going to talk about this really awesome fan film that they created. That all I got to say is I am so pumped about this. And I'm going to get into some reasons why I'm even pumped without actually seeing it. First and foremost, if you were with us last week, basically Whitney, who was on the show with us, Whitney Wickham, she was the one that kind of introduced me to this idea of this film, and she actually acted in it as well. And the interesting part to it is I'm a big Star Wars fan. Everybody here knows I'm a big Star Wars fan. Danny is not necessarily the Star Wars fan, but I'm hoping that we can change that by the time that this show is over. And when she was talking about it, I said to myself, you know what? Not only do I need to talk to Whitney about it, but I need to find out who did this, because she was talking it up so much. I just had to. And you know what? She got me in contact with both Mark and Chad, and I'm going to basically give them a chance to introduce themselves here in a little bit. But, you know, just through my conversations with them online, I got to tell you something. I'm actually blown away, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why. Chad allowed me to get a sneak peek of the soundtrack that he created for this particular film. And for those of you who have been watching the show and listening in for quite some time, you know I'm the movie buff between Danny and me. I'm the kind of person that would live in my theater if I could. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if sometime this summer I actually, move my studio into my theater just because it's nice and cool. But the fact of the matter is that I heard this soundtrack and I basically said, I don't even have to watch the film. Sorry, Mark. But it was just one of those, it was one of those things where it was like, I've got to see this now because this soundtrack got me so enthralled with it, which just goes to show how powerful music can actually be. So, with that being said, and I apologize for my tendency to sometimes babble, Mark, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us, where you're from, and just give us a brief rundown of your involvement with this awesome fan film.
I grew up in the Chicagoland area, and I still live here. But a backstory with that. Star Wars is the first film that I remember seeing in the theater. I was 4 years old when it actually came out. But for the film itself, for what we did for Scoundrels was it, I can't reveal in detail what stuff, but it actually started off as a joke. Was actually kind of like the plot. There was something that started there where I thought, I was like, wow, you could really make this like a sketch, like a funny Star Wars sketch, and this could be hilarious. And then I got to thinking about it. I was like, you can actually put this as a serious spin too, as a serious perspective. So I just started dabbling around. I just started writing a lot of the thoughts that were going through my head, and it just grew from there. And I had to cut it down as much as possible because, like any film project that you do, there's always the big thing about having time and money. And how much somebody can always spend on a film,
or that you never have, or you never have enough of either one of them.
Yeah, exactly. And you're always asking for one more hour or an extra $10 to do something. Luckily enough, I found a great cast and crew who most of us were just really stoked and excited about doing a Star Wars movie, and everybody was on board to do it. And people were willing to sacrifice a lot of their time just to be able to make the film to the best of our abilities with the means that we had. And basically, now it's a reality. So pretty cool.
So when you actually went to start the filming, first off, where did you actually film it? If you're in the Chicagoland area, did you find somewhere local, or did you hunt out a particular place somewhere a little out of the way?
Well, this is how, how grateful you are that things change and how communication is so key. I originally had it written where I was just going to shoot it like in a forest area. And also I was going to go down to Starved Rock in Illinois and at least get some nice background shots in there for the film. And for Chad and I both knew each other working at Six Flags, doing Fright Fest. Okay. So that's how we knew each other. And when I finally put out the notice on Facebook that I was doing a Star Wars film, Chad answered the call, like right away. That sounds so cheesy. He answered the call. So Chad and I got together. And I started talking about him. I started telling him, I was like, I'd love it if I could do like canyons and movies, and anything like that. And Chad goes, goes, dude, he goes, why don't you come up to Baraboo, Wisconsin? He's like, that's where I live. He goes, there's canyons. He goes, it's beautiful. He goes, you're going to get some great nature scenery. He goes, why don't you just come on up for a day and take a look? So I went up to Baraboo with him in February of last year. So there was ice all over the, I guess, giant hill, Devil's Lake, if you want to call it. It's a steep hill. And Chad was just like walking across like these rocks and the ice like it was no big deal at all. And there I am, like, you know, Mr. Wimp, just kind of like inching along little by little, you know, being careful and everything. But it worked out absolutely wonderful. I mean, it was a great suggestion and it was a big contribution to the film.
Oh my gosh.
Let me ask you something in regards to the film. How did you go about it, or even how difficult was it to make this film and not worry about copyright infringement from the Disney company itself?
Oh, it's still scary today. I'm kind of riding on the, you know, I hope we don't get sued type thing. Because what we did is the film it's all new characters. So it's not, nobody plays Han Solo or Luke Skywalker or anything else like that. They're just all new characters that we wanted to do just this small story that takes place in some part of the galaxy far, far away. And, you know, for these characters, one of these characters may or may not have links to another Star Wars character that people know.
Okay.
But we tried to keep it as much as possible without, you know, hopefully stepping on their toes or upsetting Disney or anything. We just wanted to make a film and just be part of the Star Wars universe. We weren't doing this to be like, hey, let's do this and let's make some money off of this. We just wanted to be a part of the Star Wars universe. And, you know, this probably might be the closest way that we'll ever get to be that.
Now, you are releasing it tomorrow.
Right.
And may the 4th be with everybody. Where, for the average... I can do a couple Star Wars lines here.
That was it.
He's got the lingo down. He knows.
That was it. Let's face it.
For the average person, for Chris, myself, you know, someone not involved in the film or knowing you guys personally, where does one obtain this film?
We're going to put it on YouTube. So it's going to be released sometime in the early hours. So in a few hours, it'll be on YouTube. And I don't have the exact address for it, but we're definitely going to be posting it, and we're going to send you guys definitely a link.
Awesome.
It's on the same account where the teaser is on for it.
Okay. Roughly length of film?
20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
20 minutes.
Okay.
It started off as 10, and then it went to 20.
I guess,
but it was well worth it. Well worth it.
I guess one of the other questions is that obviously if it was 20 minutes long, I can only imagine what ended up on the cutting room floor, so to speak. How much actual footage did you actually have in the can, so to speak, before you said, okay, that's enough. Now we got to take this down to a reasonable element.
Well, it was actually a little bit more of the opposite. We had my plan was we had 3 days to shoot, which had actually ended up taking 4 days to shoot. We came back an extra day. There's a fun story about Whitney, and I think you were talking about it last time about when Whitney got cast.
Mm-hmm.
When I told Whitney about it, because this has got like one of those twist of fate things. When I first put the notice out that I was casting for a Star Wars film, Whitney was the first person who responded to it on Facebook. And even all of her friends like sent her messages like, hey, check this out. So she was the first person to respond to me. And what she wrote was, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here a little bit, she said, I would be so up for doing this, but I'll be 7 months pregnant in May when you're filming.
She mentioned that.
So I was like, okay. But of like looking at like her photographs and everything and her headshots, I was like, yeah, I go, she really fits, for an ideal look wise that I want to go for the character. And plus she, it said on her site that she was athletic and everything else like that. And I was like, well, but she's going to be 7 months pregnant. So I ended up casting another woman, and then she backed out. And then I went on the search again, trying to find someone before May came along. and I cast another girl. I cast her the day I cast her. The very next day, she called me, and then she canceled. So then I had to put the film on hold, and I had to push it back to September. And when I did that, I put out a new notice, and then Whitney contacted me again. And she's like, "Oh my God!" She's like, "I'll be unpregnant." So I can totally do this now. So Whitney and I met at a Starbucks in Berwyn, Illinois here, and we just clicked right away. We really connected, and I pretty much knew right then and there. I was like, I think she's the right person for it. So when I was talking to her about it. She goes, at the end of the conversation, she goes, "There's just one more teeny tiny thing." She goes, "I'm moving to Arizona tomorrow." And I'm like, oh, and she's like, "Don't worry about it." She goes, "I don't care." She goes, "I'll pay for my own plane ticket. I will fly up here. I just want to be part of the film. I swear to you, I will do it." And by the conversations that I had with her, I was pretty well convinced that Whitney was 100% on board for doing it. So she got cast.
That's awesome. That is really super cool. Now, when it comes to casting, you have yourself, obviously, Whitney, and who else is a part of your cast of characters on screen?
Chad is also in the film, and also Chad's wife, Eileen. Yes, that's a secret, so don't tell anyone.
Okay, everybody, don't tell anybody.
Chad's wife, Eileen, is also in the film as well. So. We're the four main characters. We have another gentleman who's in the film as well, and El Miguel Sanchez. I think his name is. Is it? Miguel. Did I get that right, Chad?
Yeah, it's Miguel. Miguel Sanchez.
Okay. He's in it, and then our cinematographer makes an appearance as well. We'll just say out of it. But what happened was we originally had a total of cast and crew of 8 people. And 3 people didn't show up. So we had to make arrangements. And in fairness, like one of them actually contacted me a couple days beforehand and said that they couldn't make it. And I was like, that's cool. It's like, you at least let me know. The other 2 just ghosted us. They just didn't show. And it was in the sense it wasn't like it hurt it, but it made it more difficult. We had to get creative with it because they were 2 people who were supposed to be like extra bodies in the film. So we had to get creative and work around that.
Okay.
Now, when people look at podcasting in general, they see me and Chris come on for, an hour and think, we could do this. There's only an hour of their time.
Right.
Everybody, as me and Chris always allude that, even an hour show, there's literally days worth of work into a 60-minute show.
Right.
I know
it's a lot.
20-minute film for you. But how many days did you guys really put into this film? Would you estimate it at?
And wow, I can't say just like days specifically, but it started a year and a half ago. Okay, basically in the sense, and that's from the start of me actually just starting to write something down on paper. And then after a couple months of getting it down and I was comfortable about posting it online, in February of last year is when I met with Chad, and that's when we started doing scouting for locations for us. So I would drive up to Chad, every once in a while for that, and we would talk and we'd communicate. So there's a lot of days where it went by where we really didn't work on anything because we were just trying to find people to cast for the film and everything else like that. But we did. But when it got down to it of doing like the filming, we did 4 days of filming. It took me the entire month of October to edit the film, of just go through it and everything else like that. It was one of those things. We spent 3 days making the film, and then the next day I went into my full-time job and I got laid off. So yeah, that was like, wow. So I at least had the month of October just to sit and just go through it and do all the editing for it. And then it got passed on to Chad and Brent, who is our cinematographer, who did the color correction for it. And some minor touch-ups of like special effects in it as well, or motion graphics. And then Chad went on to do like all the sound design and writing the musical score for it and everything else like that. And of course, this was a project that was fun for us. So naturally, as I was talking to Chad and Brent, I was like, look, you guys, I know you guys got jobs and you guys got to earn a living. So by all means, if you get a job or something, like a gig or something, work on that, work on this in your spare time.
Yeah.
So all in all, I would say, it was a year and a half total, but not like 500 days.
Okay. So kind of going off the side here a little bit. Chad, I want to kind of talk to you a little bit here, since if nothing else, to give Mark a break. But now
I've been hearing him for a year and a half.
Yeah, Chad, I will talk to Chad 3 days straight with no sleep. So
his voice like booms. So like he's staying over. We're doing all the movies and stuff. It's like you can hear him from like 3 blocks away.
His neighbors were calling and complaining.
I mean, I play like
Cut
loud
this guy
drums.
up already.
I play loud drums and loud guitars and all that stuff. I never got a noise complaint until Mark came by.
There you go. Well, I wanted to touch on this because obviously, I mean, Mark actually kind of alluded to one of the questions I was actually going to have, in the sense of, what came first, the movie or the music, and how did you actually integrate something like that? I mean, because obviously I'm going to make an assumption. I would certainly love to have you correct me if need be. I'm going to make the assumption that you had to be inspired by what you saw in order to have the track actually, fit particular scenes, etc. Would that be kind of a roundabout way of thinking about how it started for you on this particular project for your part?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my job as a composer is to make music that stands alone, as a soundtrack and is listenable and enjoyable, but doesn't take away from the visual imagery of the film. If you're sitting there in the movie theater, and hey, I'm the music guy, I go to movies to listen to scores a lot of times, and if you're sitting there and it's like, wow, that's a really cool song. All right. All of a sudden, something big happens in the movie, and you just didn't even realize that you were watching it. So it's a very fine balance of creating something that can stand alone and be enjoyable, but also not take away from the movie itself, which is the most important part. But then also keeping, the artistic side and having some fun with it. So typically, when I work on film scores, it's, get the rough cut and go from there. Most of the time it's like, okay, here's a little snippet, because it's easy for me to fall in love with a piece of music and then, feel rejected when it's not what the director or the producer is looking for. And, my music is like my children, and so I learned to just start small, send off an idea. Hey, do you like where this is going? If you do, I'm going. If you want, okay, I'm not going to put this piece in maybe someday it'll work for something else. But however, with this film, it has, Star Wars has a style. It has a sound. And it's really about certain instruments and how they affect the emotion. This film, and it's funny because we were talking about Western music and stuff, but it kind of pulls from that style where, there's the da-da-dun, and it's just a different instrument that is done. And for, hundreds of years, we've been associating certain sounds with different emotions. I mean, listen to Peter and the Wolf is a great example of how film scoring is. The character has its voice, and it's been that way for so long that, when we hear dark brass, we know it's the bad guy.
If I could even throw it's kind of like trailer, if you don't mind me playing the track
Absolutely.
for a second. Yeah. And you automatically really think something is about to happen. I mean,
right.
just puts goosebumps on me. I'll tell you that right now. It's awesome.
All right, cool.
And I could definitely understand the concept of having it fit, and sometimes it may or may not.
But with this one, I got a little excited, and I started working on a couple little pieces that kind of made their way into the film, just because I love John Williams. He's a genius. I mean, there's not really many words that can fit other than that. The guy is absolutely incredible, and one of my biggest inspirations. So when I had the opportunity to go in and channel my inner John Williams, I had a couple. I need this instrument, that instrument, this style. So I sent Mark a teaser before he even
teased me
before he started editing, which I'm glad that I did, because it's oftentimes hard to create music that stands alone when it's scored to picture and it's not edited in a manner of meter, like time, So at least Mark had something to kind of edit a little bit to kind of build, shot changes and angles, and, to be able to make it cohesive. Because a lot of directors will send me an edited scene and say, we want music like, in this style. And then it's like, well, the cuts don't work with the music. So it's sometimes can be difficult. So typically, I get the script, I write some basic motifs, and I send them off. And then the editor has something to kind of go by. But for the most part, at the end of the day, it's to picture, because it totally changes once the edit's there. Everything changes. So there's a couple little things that just kind of magically fell into place when we had a cut. But for the most part, it's, really customized. So
now let me ask you this. I kind of alluded it with Mark. I'm going to bring it back to a different aspect for you. Is there any, I'll start with this question first. Is there any music that you scored that has a Star Wars theme to it? Anything that would resemble, like, if someone could hear it, you could be like, I could see it, in a Star Wars movie. Is there anything remotely close to that?
I kind of pulled from a lot of the same inspirations that Williams pulled from for these songs. I mean, as genius as Williams is, we got to quote, Mr. John Lennon here and say, borrowing is the biggest form of flattery. So, John Williams borrowed from a lot of his inspirations to create the Star Wars theme, Holtz, Wagner, some of these, big Tchaikovsky with, listen to the Nutcracker again and think about John Williams and like the Home Alone soundtrack or like any of that kind of stuff.
You make a very good point there. I never would have thought. I mean, I have a music background as well. I was like, okay, sure. Now I'm picturing. You're right. You're absolutely right.
So, he borrowed from a lot of these, classical era composers, and I wouldn't say, I necessarily borrowed motifs, but just like instruments, voicings, effects, things, crescendos, things like that, where kind of all have their place in that Star Wars world. Something happens, put it on with the trumpets, and stuff. So there's a lot of that. So especially like the main theme is really very Star Wars-esque, I'd say. It's in the same kind of vibe.
So then to follow it up,
but there's no, it's all original.
Okay.
I didn't use the Imperial March.
Yeah, obviously, everybody, we've said,
because that's when we get in trouble.
Yeah, well, that's where the second question was going with it. Was, I know this is all original. I know you've created it from scratch, but when you use the word borrow, I mean, are you afraid of any backlash from Disney in that aspect?
On my end, no.
Okay.
And when I say borrow, I mean,
you're not recreating the wheel.
Well, right. The Beatles, took American music and sold it back to us.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like how many blues songs are there in the world? They're all the same formula.
But it's more the motif.
Formulas, you know, like that is more what I meant from borrowing.
As I say, like to add on to that, and I think this just falls for any art that you do, whether it's painting or music or film. Quentin Tarantino, they interviewed him one time, asking him about was it true that he took scenes from other movies and copied them? And he said, well, yeah. He goes, everybody does it. He goes, that's how new movies and new stories get made. You take a piece from here and a piece from there. He goes, and then you throw in your own experiences and your own expressions, and that's how new movies and new stories get made. And I think it's the same thing with music too. These are the people who inspire you. What's the old saying? If you take from one, it's plagiarism, but if you take from many, it's research.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that anybody who's an artist is always going to at least recognize that it's like, hey, there's a difference between you being inspired by me and other artists, and then there's a difference between you just taking what I've created and just using that for yourself and then claiming that you did it. And this is an aspect that I think that, especially like for Chad's score, like I said, it's all original. The sound effects that we did were all original. We didn't do anything or take anything from Lucasfilm at all and use anything of theirs like that.
Now, it's amazing that you guys can take that. I'm sorry, Chris. I didn't mean to walk over you. It's amazing that you guys can take Lucasfilms. You could take the trilogies and the mass. I mean, they're worth billions upon billions of dollars. You know, Star Wars is like the Beatles, it hits every age group. Everybody loves it. It's a timeless classic.
Right.
And you guys found a way to make it a smaller community and brought your own ideas and own film into the market. Yeah, sure, it's not a 3-hour movie like Lucasfilm does. It's a 20-minute, short, but it's your inspiration. And that blows my mind that you guys were able to, the imagination and being able to, it sounds like you really, I know you had a lot of people bail on you. And I know that road must have been extremely long for both you and Chad and for everybody else involved in the film. But it sounds like the core people you guys had on your team is going to make this an instant success, in my opinion.
I would say, yeah, absolutely. You're dead on. I couldn't. I guess I could have asked for a better cast and crew, but I wouldn't have gotten one because I had the best cast and crew on this film. And you got Chad. I feel you, brother. I feel you. But this was one of the things that was great about making it is that all 5 of us, we just all connected really well of making this film. Anybody who was on set, if they had an issue with doing something, they would speak up and speak their mind. They would be, they'd come over to me and ask me. At first, they'd be like, I just want to make sure it's okay, whatever, do you mind if I try doing it this way or something? I was like, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Let's try it and see. There was nothing, there was a lot of give and take for us. And it was the same thing for Chad. When Chad was scoring it, I got to sit down next to him. And as he would go through, I would make suggestions and I'd be like, is it possible? Can we do this? Can we make it a little lower, a little higher? Or can we make this a little bit faster or something? And Chad would do it and he would try it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But finally, at the end result, we got this really beautiful musical score that came out of it. I'm really happy about it.
That's what makes a really good core group. I mean, me and Chris sometimes couldn't be the most opposite people in the world. We come from very different walks of life. Yeah. We're in major different situations, life-wise at this moment. But I mean, could we have asked for, some high exec to be one of our, co-hosts? Sure, but it wouldn't be the chemistry that me and him have.
Right.
And we wouldn't be as successful as we are today compared to what we were a year ago. And that's what it really is. I mean, it's not only me and him, just like it's not just you and Chad. You guys have a good core team. We have a good core team. And sometimes the most misfit group of people can be give you the best possible outcome. And I just find it amazing that you guys just were able to do a film like this. It boggles my mind. It's crazy.
I'm in the same boat with you for that too. I mean, I was really amazed at just how smoothly it went. Not that we didn't have. I mean, we had our issues, but the thing about it is that's the important thing. Like you said, like the core chemistry that a group of people have with each other. It wasn't that things went smooth. It was that when things got difficult for us, nobody got upset or threw a fit or said, "I'm not doing this," whatever. We all just grouped together and said, "Okay, let's just figure this out. What do we need to do?" And fortunately, like I said, I had the best people around me to be able to make this, the best possible film that we could do. I'm sad because I would have loved to have stayed another week and just filmed a lot more with all of them.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on that real quick, and then I'm going to let Chris chime in.
Sure.
So you started with a 20-minute short. It's getting released tomorrow on May the 4th. Does it depend on the success of it, or do you see another film possibly in the future? Where does the road, did the road start and end here, or is there a horizon that we haven't reached yet for you?
You read my mind. Thank you so much. I kid you not. He was going to ask the question. He just asked the question I was going to ask because I'm really like, what's next? I mean, granted, Danny and I haven't seen it yet, so if anybody is listening, we obviously not spoiling it, but let's
without spoiling anything. I'd say that for the 20 minutes that we have, there was a lot more that I wrote. Even like Whitney was like picking my brain about it when we were making the film. And I came up and I told her this whole backstory about all the characters. And she was like, "Oh my God." She's like, "So there's like," I was like, "Yeah." I go, "I wrote a lot of stuff about it. I just had to narrow it down to make it as condensed as possible with still kind of making some sense." And I had a 10-page script, which turned into a 20-minute film. And usually they say the average is like, 1 page for 1 minute, and, give yourself a little leeway with it. But so I ended up telling Whitney about it, about the whole backstory. And then she started picking my brain more about the details of the characters and why I did this and why I did that. So it really got into a lot of details. And there's other stuff that I would have loved to have done where I could have made this a feature film in the sense, whatever, by the material that I would have on paper. Unfortunately, I don't have the resources or the time or the money for us to actually go ahead and do that. And plus, there's also the aspect that, I think you have a better chance of getting away with a short fan film, and not have Disney come after you rather than, you do this whole feature film and, people like it or something like that. So on that aspect, I told her about that, and there's other possibilities that this could go forward, and you could do, you could continue the story basically with this. You could continue on with these characters.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you put it like that, because I mean, I'm sure that the story could have evolved even further. I mean, you start with this, and like you said, you have enough to do even more to. I'll use the term sequel if that's it, or a secondary story to it.
Right.
Yeah. But obviously, I kind of agree with you. The fact of the matter is that, I think many people would have the aspirations to make it bigger, larger, better, especially given enough time and time and money and resources, et cetera, and people's patience, of course. That you can make it large enough that you can actually have it over at the Sundance Film Festival or something like that.
Right.
But that would be like neon signs saying, "Hello, guess what I did?"
Right.
And I'm sure,
"Hey, look, guys."
Yeah. And it's like, you could sit there, waiting for I'm probably going to get this wrong, like the Tribeca Film Festival. And it's like, okay, here we go for this particular film, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden someone hands you an envelope, and it's not one saying, "Hey, congratulations, you won an award," but it's a cease and desist letter,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Excuse me, but this film will not be shown today or any other day.
Well, obviously you've got the right aspect in mind. And I'm not necessarily a filmmaker. I'm just other than Okay, I joke around and saying I make one pretty darn good home movie here and there, but of my vacations and stuff like that. But by no means do I have the patience. Heck, it takes me, it took me 2 hours just to do a 30-second, intro bit,
Sure.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
And, just because of, I flounder through it all, type of thing. And Chad, I kind of wanted to ask you, this is what you do, right? I mean, you are a professional musician, composer. This is more of your livelihood than anything else, from what I gather.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've worked on several films, but I come from a background of about 20 years of performance and studio musician. So this is 100%. My livelihood. I do music all day, every day, and there's no time clock here. And it's there's no. I don't punch out. I'm working. Right now I've been working all day. So, and when I get done here, I'm working on another project until our next interview. So there's a lot of work involved, especially when you compose. When you're in a band, it's there's practice, and then there's rehearsal. Practice is what you do before you get to rehearsal, so you're not wasting the rest of the band's time.
Right.
So there's always something to do, in this world. So, got baby coming in August, so just trying to get as much work done as possible before baby. Yeah, because I want to be daddy. I don't want to be the weird guy that crawls out of the basement, every few hours for a drink and a meal.
Who crawls out of the basement?
That's Uncle Mark over there.
I'm going to be the uncle that they don't talk about.
And besides,
talk about Uncle Mark at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. You leave him alone. Don't feed him.
Don't feed him.
Don't go near him unless one of us are around.
But yeah, I mean, I was the band leader for the group Richard Cranium for 12 years. Yeah. Sometimes people get it, and sometimes it takes a while. So I'm glad you caught that one.
Sorry,
if you're listening at home, someday you may or may not figure it. But so that was I named the band when I was in high school. So give me a break. And now I do. Look at these guys. I do.
Oh man!
I have a new group named Vardo where I compose everything, and I bring in a lot of musicians. It started out as a studio project, but we caught the attention of the organizer of TeslaCon, which is the nation's largest steampunk convention, and he brought us on, and he heard some of the demos we were working on, and said, "Oh man, we really got to." Incorporate this into our convention somehow. So we ended up setting up and doing the official ballroom dance shows where we play, traditional, dance music and also original music as well.
Oh my gosh!
So we had to bring Vardo from the studio to the stage, and we're actually releasing the debut Vardo record, Once Upon a Time in the Midwest, on the 9th. So we got 8 days from today. So you can check that out. There's Facebook and on the website. My company is Canebula Records. So you can go to canebula.com and check out a little bit of everything I do. There's several more movies coming out and a bunch of records. There'll be 4 Vardo records over the next, year or so. So, yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I'm the kind of person, I listen to pretty much anything from Mozart to Metallica and everything in between, and even some stuff that probably hasn't even been heard of yet. It's just, I have a very eclectic taste in music, so I will definitely be checking some of that out, and I hope that everybody is able to check some of that out as well. We'll be posting up some links after the show over at the Behind the Ears Podcast Facebook page, as well as the WDW community page as well. Now, Mark, I kind of wanted to ask you the same question. Is is basically, movie production. Is that your bread and butter, or more just of a personal passion for you?
And that's not I'd love for it to be my bread and butter. It does play, I guess, some role to it. I originally went to college for graphic design. My big claim to fame is I used to design Beanie Babies.
What?
Yeah. That was a cool job.
I've got a lot of those. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Nice.
That was a big thing when I was a kid. Yeah.
I'm ashamed to find out that you do, but that's beside the point.
What's that?
I was telling Danny, if he's not ashamed to say that you had a lot of them. I'm like, well, I'm ashamed to hear that you had a lot of them. Says the guy.
All right, Danny, I appreciate it because you helped pay my rent.
There you go, man. I'm sorry.
Says the guy.
Everybody says, have you checked eBay? Some of those puppies are worth a lot of money.
Yeah, they are.
I know. I shouldn't say anything. Says the guy with Figment. So
there you go. Yeah. We all have our collections that we like to gather around us. And
my collection is very expensive. I have a lot of musical instruments.
Yeah, I was going to say, you Chad, you're a guy that would have a wall of guitars.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, I've got a lot of guitars, but they're all a little different. It's not like I have a bunch of just like electric guitars. I have Cigano guitar. I've got a dobro guitar. All different shapes and sizes. I have a sitar guitar. All kinds of different things depending on the project I'm working on. So
I meant
it's a different flavor. So.
I meant to ask Chad, the soundtrack. Is it a mixture of, I'll say, live performance as well as computer generated, or is it? Yeah.
Well, there's a whole lot going on in there, and it's also I really wanted. I'm a theremin player, and I really wanted to incorporate theremin. And I showed Mark, and he's like, "Yeah, that's weird." And I was like, "All right." At the end of the day, there's what I like, and then there's what the director likes.
And
it doesn't matter what I like.
And I'm probably one of the few people.
Yeah, that's great, Chad. That's good. Move on.
Yeah,
and I'm probably one of the few people that are listening in right now that knows what a theremin is, but that's beside the point.
Sure. Basically, amplified radio waves. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
That wee sound you hear in the sci-fi films. And I really wanted to incorporate that. The main theme's got that wah, wah, wah. I was like, man, it's perfect for theremin, But I did a little bit of that, but there's a lot of sampled instruments that I've brought in. So are they computer kinda, but I work with a lot of musicians, and I play a lot of instruments. And I have many sessions of, different notes and things. So I can piece together an instrument that way too.
Yeah. Okay. I can
by sampling different things. So there's a mixture of there's a couple different techniques in there.
So as we wrap up here, we do have one listener question. We've had a lot of questions throughout this entire show. Literally, you guys have done a bang-up job of literally answering them before we've actually had to ask them. But John had said he had read the 1996 Star Wars short novel called Tales of the Bounty Hunter. And, so you're familiar with it. Did it inspire you at all for the film?
I was going to comment because I was trying to look to see how, is there any way I could type and answer his question? For there, I saw it. Yes, John. I loved Tales from the Bounty Hunter, and I guess in the sense of the short story aspect that they did in the books was helped to be inspiration for it, especially with the. I wouldn't so much it was Tales from the Bounty Hunter did, but more specifically Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina. Because the movie's called Scoundrels, and you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. So that was an inspiration about it. So I hope that answers this question. Okay. Satisfactory. Cindy's asking up there, what's your next project? I don't know yet at this time. And this would be getting back to what Chris was asking earlier. my background was originally graphic design, and I did that for years, even up till last September is what I was doing. But I can do film, writing, anything else like that. I'm always up for working on a project. So if you know anyone who wants to make a movie, hit me a line. I love to entertain people.
Okay. As we wrap up here, why don't Chad, Mark, you guys plug the movie again and plug any side projects you guys have going, any side businesses. Literally take the next few minutes to plug yourself. Let everybody know where to find you and all the stuff you guys do. So whoever, why don't we start with, you know what? Let's start with Chad first. Go ahead, Chad.
Well, I guess first I'd like to say this would be a very different movie if it wasn't for our cinematographer, Brent Haremsa. Brent came in and, Mark had a lot of ideas and Brent really ran with them. And the whole idea of, us working together and getting along and things like that really did work out. But it didn't hurt that we were stuck on top of a mountain, literally, and we had to get along because I had all the water and food. So
there you go.
Gotta be nice to me.
Because we were all dumb and didn't bring any food.
Yeah.
Chad,
so
Chad
I had backpack and front pack. And then, my wife Eileen is more than just my wife. And she came in and really stepped in and got some really, really great on-set photography. And her role in the film is she did a bang-up job. Everyone that was involved poured 110%. And Miguel as well kind of stepped in and filled a spot that we thought was going to be just a simple thing to do. And it turned out that Miguel was the man for the job. And he absolutely nailed it. So as all the pieces just kind of fell into place. So without all of these people, it only took 6 people to make this movie. And without them, it would be very, very different, especially Brent and his eye. He's got an amazing eye. And, Mark's a great cameraman and photographer as well in his own right. But what Brent brought to this film,
Brent added to it, he just, wow, I was blown away. Absolutely. What he was able to do.
So you can check him out. He does a lot of independent work, Blind Exposure, BLXP. I think it's just blindexposure.com, Blind Exposure LLC, right. blindexposureproductions.com. But Brent is awesome, so check him out by all means. And also, in my world, there's always another project. So right now, Vardo is coming out. There's 3 more Vardo records. There's a Toma record. There's a whole lot. I'm working on a lot of films right now, but I can't talk about them. That's the nature of film work.
Absolutely.
So I can't even I can't even announce some of the names. But one that I can that is about to come out is called The Damned Thing, and it's a short film based on a short story by Ambrose Bierce of the same name, and it's basically a story of isolation and terror.
Ooh, that's up my alley.
Yeah, so I don't want to dive too much into it, but if you read the short story, it's out there. It's been out there for a very long time. It's an older short story, and very interesting. Basically, kind of boils down to this man running from he doesn't even know what he's running from in the woods, and it's super spooky. And I did all the sound design and music for that as well, and kind of channeled my Native American, spirit of the woods, kind of. It's kind of where I channeled the music for. I did a lot of drums and chants and a lot of throat singing. I voiced something, I may or may not be the damned thing. So in a form. But so that's coming out soon. I know has been or will be. It comes out at the film festival, so I think that's kind of what's going on with that. But so there's always something coming from my neck of the woods.
All right. Well, Chad, we look forward to hearing the score from you and seeing you in the film, and it was an absolute pleasure having you on. We do appreciate it, and and I look forward to looking deeper into some of your work and really exploring some of your different variety of options.
All right. A lot of different flavors.
No,
Thank you
awesome.
guys for having us,
Thank you.
too.
Oh, no problem. As for Mark, I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up as well? I mean, other than we've got a whole bunch of people that are basically saying, hey, where are we going to find it?
Right.
And also maybe some of the other things that you're involved with as well.
Yeah, the film will be on YouTube, and we're definitely going to send you a link, Chris, to you and Danny, so you guys can put it on behind the ears. So hopefully for all your listeners, it'll be easy for them to find it. They can always go to our page on Facebook as well, which is Star Wars Scoundrels: A Smuggler's Tale. Basically, for myself, like I said, I do stuff of graphic design, but I love watching movies, and I love making films. So I do camera work, I do writing, I do a ton of writing. You can ask Chad on that one. So I do writing. I said I do acting, but I do directing also. And then for myself, in the meantime, I'm also like a tour guide in Chicago because I just love history. So I can tell you like a ton of history stuff about Chicago. But yeah, if basically to sum it up, if anyone out there wants to work on a film, or other filmmakers who would love to get together and make some films, I'm always up for connecting with other people and moving on to another project. Other than that, we hope you guys are able to find Scoundrels tomorrow easy. We hope that you guys enjoy it, and we hope that Disney doesn't sue us.
Yes, fingers crossed, not getting sued. Always,
we're just hoping that they just see it as we're just Star Wars fans who just like to be part of a small piece of their galaxy far, far away.
Awesome.
And one other thing before we do go, I just want to say thank you to Whitney for connecting the dots. And she killed it, man. She's going to be a star, man. That girl is absolutely talented. And what she does with cosplay is amazing. I love watching her adventures. She's incredible human. So thank you again, Whitney.
Yeah. Quick one on that one on set. My belt broke on set, and Whitney was like we're like up on this mountain, and Whitney's like, just give it to me, I can fix it. And she starts pulling all this stuff like out of her jacket and everything, and like fixed my belt like in 2 minutes. Phenomenal.
Yeah, I will say that Whitney's conversation with us last week was probably, I would probably say one of the best interviews that we've had as well in I won't say in a long time, because that makes it. We love every one of the guests that come on our show.
It was a good interview. Yeah.
It was really solid. And the thing is, and as most know me, it doesn't happen all that often. Because Lord knows, Lord knows that we can do our share of talking, which, taking into consideration in a few short weeks, we're going to be going on a 12+ hour marathon to raise money for Give Kids the World Village. Yeah, It's going to be pretty awesome. So, by all means, guys, we really super duper appreciate having you here. It's wonderful talking with you. I'm really glad that you took this time out because, quite honestly, we talk about Disney all the time, and is a part of the Disney universe, so to speak, in time, what it's like to actually inception to creation to publication. And, we all, super ton of us saw, in half hours, but then all